Welcome to the Aaron Harber Show. My guest today, James Bellingham from Woods Hole, the Woods Hole Institute. Great to see you. Great to have you here, Jim.
Well, thanks.
Certainly Woods Hole is extremely well-known, famous institute. You are the really founding director of the Center of Marine Robotics. Right. So tell me about the center.
Well, our center really is an umbrella over a whole set of robotics activities that occur at Woods Hole. And probably the most important thing that we do is we create a larger framework so that all these individual things lead towards sort of the larger breakthroughs that we believe are needed in the ocean sciences, and we connect with industry. And that's actually for us incredibly important because while historically most of our work was funded by the government, places like the National Science Foundation and by the Navy, increasingly, what we do impacts the broader enterprises in the ocean, everything from, of course, energy, but even things like aquaculture as well. And so we find that we are getting a lot of engagement from industry, and that's what one of the things that we work to do is to develop those relationships and common understandings of what the important problems are.
So what are some of the practical applications you're hoping to achieve in the robotic realm?
Well, I think that the most important thing for us is developing a more permanent presence in the ocean. I mean, we are an oceanographic institution. We care about our ability to predict, in effect, what the future ocean is going to be like. What the future ocean is going to be like next week and what it's going to be like 50 years from now. That's important partly because it tests our understanding, but it's also important because it feeds into important decisions that we have to make about how we manage our interaction with the ocean environment. And so these are things which depend on our ability to work in and observe the ocean environment. It is a dark, impenetrable place. It's crushingly deep. I mean, you could drop Mount Everest in it, it would disappear. It blocks radio waves too. And, not to get too technical on you, this is a real pain in the neck, right? Because all of that GPS and radio communications that our entire society is built on goes away the moment you go an inch or two below the waves. And so we have to kind of create a whole new set of tools for interacting with our systems underwater.
So just out of curiosity, I assume it doesn't go away an inch below. But what kind of range do you actually have or can you get in terms of communicating with a vessel, whether it be robotic or otherwise?
Well, if you try to do it with radio waves, actually, if it were, say, GPS we were talking about, it's even worse. It's like, less than a millimeter even. It's very, now the U.S. Navy, on the other hand, found that if they worked at very low frequencies, they could penetrate deeper. How deep? Well, I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. So,
get in line.
Yeah. Oh, the last interview didn't go well.
Or the ones before that.
Or the ones before that. Well, so you can penetrate deeper into the ocean if you use low frequencies, but then that means you need large antennas, you need large amounts of power, and frankly, when you use those low frequencies, you actually can't push much in the way of data through. So we come up with other methods. We use acoustics. We use relays, so we can use a surface platform that talks to a satellite and then talks acoustically to a submerged vehicle. And actually, it turns out that lasers, optics, can push a lot of data over shorter ranges, like think a football field type length. We can push a megabit a second or so across those ranges. So there's no silver bullet. But there's a lot of tools that we have in our toolkit that let us communicate with our undersea systems.
Have you thought of like daisy chaining a series of devices?
That is a great question. And in fact, a friend of mine, an MIT professor, wrote a paper on chained vehicles, virtual chains, I think he called it, in the ocean. And he wasn't thinking of it so much as communication relays, although that is definitely a use for it. But you also use it in a way for distributing your sensors through the water column. So when you fly across the country and you look out your window, you're maybe 30,000 feet or so up in the sky. When you're out there on a ship in the ocean, you're maybe 20,000 feet over the seafloor. So it's sort of a comparable distance. So if you think about it, you're a long way over the seafloor. That's a lot of ocean between you and in that rock or muddy bottom. And if you want to know what's going on, you've got to have instruments, right, all through that water column. So we work on things like very low-cost vehicles that we can operate in large numbers. So great question.
Well, thank you. I just made it up, so what can I tell you? What about the concept in terms of some of the parallels with deep sea ocean research and research in space, and space itself, and of course the oceans as well?
Well, so we have great collaborations with NASA and with some of the industry organizations that work in the space environment, because in fact, you're right, a lot of our problems are common. We have a tough time talking to our vehicles, they have a tough time talking to theirs. Now, interestingly, a robot sitting on the surface of Mars actually has a higher bandwidth connection back to Earth than our instruments on the seafloor. So actually, astoundingly, our communications are actually worse in most cases than most NASA systems. But we also both encounter challenges associated with testing. So you make a complicated system, how do you make sure it works? And what are the costs of getting it wrong? And so both of us suffer, very high penalties when our stuff doesn't work. I started life as a physicist. If one in 10 of my experiments worked, I wrote a paper, and who thought about the other 9? If I go to sea and I put my vehicle in the water and 1 out of 10 times it doesn't work, it doesn't come back, and that's not good for my career. So we actually operate on a much higher reliability requirement in the ocean environment, and the NASA folks do as well. So we think about very similar things.
So what has you most excited about deep sea research right now?
Well, I think that we're in the dawn of an ocean century. This is most of the planet. As we increasingly stress resources in the terrestrial environment, where do we have to turn to? Well, we turn to the ocean environment, and of course we see that in the energy world already, right? As you exploit those reservoirs of oil and land, you move into deep water and you find fabulous new resources in the offshore environment. We see that occurring in deep water mining. Fisheries is going through a transition. 10,000 years ago, humans went from hunter-gatherer to farming, and really in the last 100 years or so, that's been going on in the ocean. So these are all fabulous evolutions of the human relationship with the ocean. And a lot of this is occurring in almost an information vacuum. It is a big, dark environment that we don't understand very well. There's a lot of organisms in there we don't even know they exist, much less what they do or who they eat or who eats them. So there's a lot for us to understand about the ocean environment for us in order to work in it in a constructive and sustainable way.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with James Bellingham of the Center for Marine Robotics in just a moment.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbertv.com.
The Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award recognizes an individual who, through leadership, skill, and dedication, is advancing the broadcast industry in our state and our nation. Tonight, we honor Aaron Harber. Aaron has worked extensively in the media as a host, producer, political and economic commentator, and columnist. Today, the Aaron Harber Show is the focus of his media involvement. Aaron, it is a privilege to present you with the Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award. Congratulations.
Just make journalism great again. Join me and watch the Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harper Show.
Watch the Aaron Harber Show.
I'm Reverend Jesse Jackson. Watch the Aaron Harber Show and keep hope alive.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of the Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scene photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today. Hi, I'm Aaron Harber, host of the Aaron Harber Show. Because I've never done endorsements or commercials, people ask how are our programs funded, especially because we provide them as a public service to all our broadcast outlets. It's expensive to produce our show, whether we do them here in Denver or go to places such as Aspen, Washington, D.C., or even Iraq. The answer is we depend on contributions to support our work to bring you some of the nation's top opinion leaders. Individuals, businesses, foundations, and other nonprofits make tax-deductible contributions to the Democracy and Media Education Foundation to help allow us to continue to work for you. To find out more or to make a donation, just go to dmefd.org. The DMEF is a tax-exempt public charitable organization and has promised to dedicate 100% of every contribution to support our public affairs initiatives. If you believe as I do in the need for a forum which promotes civil discourse and mutually respectful discussion, I hope you'll decide to make a contribution today.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at www.harbortv.com.
Welcome back to the show. I'm with James Bellingham from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. Great having you again, Jim. So you were talking about the oceans and kind of the condition of the oceans, what we're learning. Talk a little bit, just kind of your take on the issue of ocean acidification and the research into that.
Well, so this is one of the consequences of more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So first of all, we know that there's a lot more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere because we have good atmospheric records. Now, the thing about carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is that it's actually inert, right? It doesn't tend to chemically react with other things unless you go to a lot of work to make it react with something. In the ocean environment, when that carbon dioxide dissolves into the upper ocean, it actually doesn't stay carbon dioxide. It actually kind of comes apart in a molecular sense. And one of the end products that you get out is an acid. And so the pH of the ocean, or the acidity of the ocean increases, or the pH decreases. And what we do know is that that has real consequences for some organisms in the ocean. So things like the very small phytoplankton, these are little, basically drifting plants in the ocean. They're so small you really can hardly see them with your eye, but they produce half of the oxygen we breathe. We know that they don't like having the pH drop too low. Now, we don't really know how big this impact is going to be. We know that as ocean acidification becomes more pronounced, it has an impact on coral reefs. So coral reefs are already impacted by the fact that the ocean is warmer than it used to be, and so that's been causing large die-offs there. And what happens is the pH effects are mostly at towards higher latitudes, towards the poles. And so what you get is you get sort of the warming, out down near the equator, kind of doing in coral reefs there, and then the pH shift at the higher latitudes, kind of doing in coral reefs there. So you have a bit of a double whammy there on that particular part of our ecosystem. And then it has another consequence, which is think about you go and you exercise and you feel tired. What's happened? Well, your muscles have developed a bit of acidity, right? There's this lactic acid.
Lactic acid.
Right. And so this is associated with respiratory, drop in pH is associated with respiratory distress. And this is true of larger organisms in the ocean as well. That's all of these things are in early days in terms of ocean scientists actually really having a great understanding, a detailed understanding. But we do know that the combination of sort of a changing pH in the ocean and changing temperatures actually means that some deep parts of the ocean may not be survivable anymore for fish. because that combination of respiratory distress for them may make those regions, basically too low on oxygen, in effect, not insufficient oxygen for them to survive. So this is still something that people are working on. They're very tough problems, but it's clear that there are impacts, and I think the one thing we can be sure of is when you tweak a system as complicated as this, there are going to be surprises.
All the time. And is it fair to say scientifically that that carbonization, that we're the ones making a major contribution to that, because there are markers so that we can actually tell, scientists can actually tell where that carbon, what the sources of that carbon is. Is that accurate or not?
Yes, I mean, we know that since the Industrial Revolution basically started, that humans have been putting progressively more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and we actually have, quite good records of that. And we can actually see the whole planet breathe. If you look at those, carbon dioxide records, you can see the northern hemisphere as it goes, through spring and summer, sort of absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and then it releases it again. So you see these little seasonal, squiggles on a larger trend towards a higher carbon dioxide future. So yes, I mean, it's that part of it. Now, exactly what the contributions are, where it's going, that detailed bookkeeping, those remain ongoing. Those remain ongoing questions. And so, just to use one example, is as there's warming at high latitudes and you melt basically this permanent layer of ice that was in the soil up there. As that oil, that permafrost it's called, melts, it begins to release things like methane gases, which, by the way, are even greater global warming, have an even greater global warming impact than carbon dioxide.
Right, about 84 times greater, but they also last for a shorter period of time.
That is, yeah. So these are. This is, honestly, this is the most complex problem that I think humans have ever tried to solve. I mean, we're literally trying to understand how our planet breathes, and all of the contributions to it, and where things go, and how it's going to respond to our perturbations. It is truly a grand enterprise.
And you mentioned the coral die-offs. Those seem to have accelerated quite significantly. I don't know if you've seen the documentary Chasing Coral or not. It's very, very graphic depiction, especially, of course, the Great Barrier Reef and what's happening there. How do we save coral reefs, or do you have any sense of what can we do to make a difference, or is it just we're just past a tipping point or not?
Well, I'm a technologist, so I believe the answer is always more robots. But in all seriousness, I think there's long-term answers to that, and that we need to stabilize our impact on the planet. And fortunately, there's a lot of really good things going on in the technology world. Renewables are doing phenomenal. Solar is coming across, is going gangbusters. So you can see the beginnings of transitions occurring, right, in terms of our what our energy future looks like. I think also, we are getting a lot more efficient in how we use energy. And so this is something which you see that, the same activities, I mean, for driving a car, right? My car gets, several times the mileage of what the car was, which I drove when I was a kid. At the same time, though, you have a world, much of the world is actually very poor. And as they become wealthier, they want a lot of the things that we have. Sure. And fair enough.
You can't blame them. Well, when we come back, I'd be really interested in terms of, from your perspective, what have you been excited about in terms of what we've found based on deep sea research and the ocean floor. So we're going to take our last break. We'll be right back with Jim in just a moment.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbertv.com.
Used by fire professionals around the world, Fire Ice XT Spray is an eco-friendly, easy-to-use suppressant gel designed to quickly and efficiently stop and contain all kinds of fire and heat-related events, including fiberglass, lithium batteries, and other combustible up to 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit for use in your home, office, RV, fireplace, boat, kitchen, and garage. For more information on Fire Ice XT Spray, visit us online at fireice.com.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scene photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today. I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scene photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today. I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. I very much would like to hear from you about the program, so please send me an email with your thoughts. You can suggest what topics I should cover, what guests I should invite to be on the show, or even what specific questions you would like me to ask. This is your program, so send your suggestions to aaron@harbortv.com. I promise to personally read every one, so email me today. And most of all, thanks for watching. I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scene photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at www.harbortv.com.
Welcome back to the show. I am with Jim Bellingham from Woods Hole. You know, I'm really interested in your take, and as a scientist and as a human, what has excited you the most about deep sea research, robotics, and what you've found to date, and what really the field has uncovered?
Well, so first of all, I'll just say a lifestyle comment. You know, I grew up as a kid moving around, and we lived some pretty interesting places. I spent 2 years in Nepal in junior high school. And I have a taste for, you know, wanting to go interesting places. And let me tell you, working on marine robotics puts you on 3 different frontiers. It puts you on the scientific frontier. You're studying problems that in many times we don't even know how to ask the question, you know, frame the question. It's very definitely a technology-driven enterprise, so it's the frontier of robotics. But also, you know, I've been to the Antarctic, I've been to the Arctic, we've operated out of ice camps, you know, it's been, it's taken me to some of the most beautiful places on the planet. So I would say in that sense, it's a magnificent enterprise. Now, in a scientific sense, although I'm a physicist by training and I tend to think of the ocean as being composed of little water molecules, and okay, there's a dash of salt in there. In fact, I've been astonished to find, you know, as I work with biologists, that actually my conception of the ocean is wrong. The ocean is actually filled with microbes. I mean, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of them in every drop of water, and they're literally transforming the chemistry of the planet. It would be fundamentally a different planet if they didn't exist. And so as a consequence, I remember the day I was talking to, actually I was reading a science fiction novel, I think, and they were talking about this planet where the ocean was living, and talked to it, and I thought about it for a moment, and I went, hey, wait a minute, our ocean is alive. I mean, you don't have to go to science fiction. Our ocean is alive. Every drop of it is alive. And so to me, that was, I think, sort of one of my more amazing revelations, is to sort of look out there and think that, okay, yeah, there's fish in there, there's a whale or whatever, but literally the very fabric of it is alive and transforming every minute. Now, there's a whole set of things also that have to do with sort of human interaction with the ocean. And I'll have to admit that I'm a bit of an archaeology groupie, and so, you know, I think that, you know, some of some of these discoveries of shipwrecks, in the ocean, of course, you know, Woods Hole, you know, we found the Titanic. We actually found the Air France that was lost flying from Brazil to France. We found the data recorder for the El Faro. That went down in that hurricane some years ago. And I think that, you know, there's a record of human travel on the planet and, you know, human exploration that's on the seafloor, many times in deep and otherwise inaccessible places that is finally opening to us. And we're beginning to learn something about where we've come from and where we go to and what our ancestors were doing. So I find this all thrilling.
So in that vein, just some numbers in terms of depths, what robotic autonomous vehicles can do. Talk a little bit about that and where you hope to go with that.
So it turns out that most life lives in the upper part of the ocean. So if you can go down about 1,000 feet, you can actually do a pretty good job of studying the parts of the ocean that are interacting with the atmosphere, interacting with that carbon dioxide, producing the oxygen we breathe. And so that upper part of the ocean, we actually can build a lot of robots that, they do things like they move along the ocean surface using waves to propel them, kind of like you would use wind. And we do make, there's robots also that sail. So they're little sailing robots, and they'll, can sail across an ocean. We make undersea vehicles that carry sometimes whole laboratories that literally extract organisms from the seawater, extract the DNA from the organisms, and then actually, fingerprint in the ocean what organisms are there from their molecular signature. And then, as you go deeper, what happens is you get to an environment which has been much less studied, particularly, what we call the Hadal Ocean. So below 6,000 meters, so think, 3.5 miles, all the way down to the deepest part of the ocean, 11 kilometers. That area there, the number of people who have descended there is actually fewer than the number of people who've gone to the moon.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you think of our little corner of a solar system, it's the least explored part of it. And so who knows, what mysteries we have to discover down there. And I think we're making robots that will be able to work there and operate there on a fairly routine basis.
How about humans? What's our potential in terms of going down that far? Is it just an impossibility?
We can go down. So the Trieste was a submersible operated by the U.S. Navy, actually. Don Walsh is, still around, a phenomenal guy, and and then all these guys have these incredible stories from this era of the '60s, where they're all kind of cowboys at sea. They were doing some crazy stuff, they descended to the Challenger Deep, and then more recently, Cameron, the filmmaker, built his own submarine and went down himself. And he's a big guy. And the Sphere there is a big vehicle, which he donated to us, actually, at Woods Hole. It's a big vehicle, but the Sphere that he had to get in is this little tiny sphere. And I don't know about you, I don't think of myself as claustrophobic, but, you crawl in there, and and thinking about descending 11 kilometers into the ocean, I am seriously impressed.
Yeah. No, he's very impressive. He's been on the show, and
oh, has he?
We've talked about that, and I'm just amazed at shall we say the range of his interests.
Yeah.
Because of course most people think of him in terms of films.
We're very fortunate to have individuals like that who are our champions. I say our champions who are the ocean's champions.
Jim, thanks so much.
Thank you.
My pleasure. That was Jim Bellingham from the Woods Hole Institute. I'm Aaron Harber. Thanks for watching.
Please contact us. We want to hear from you. And thanks for watching.